with the local plan there?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. All right. Luis, I'm not sure if you can hear me right now, but we are ready to go in 1, 2, 3. Okay, I would like to welcome everyone today on June 16th with the Mission Valley SELPA. Today is the public hearing for the annual budget plan and the annual service plan. As many of you know, Governor Newsom signed in changes to the Brown Act, which allows us to meet remotely and conduct our public hearings via this Zoom platform. So for this meeting, the annual service plan, the annual budget plan public hearing, we will begin with introductions, and then we'll review the annual budget plan, and we will then review the annual service plan, and then we will answer any questions or comments. Sarah, I believe I had asked you to help me to monitor comments that come through on the Google Doc. Are you able to access that?
On the Google Doc?
Yeah.
Let me get that open. And yes, I can do it on the Google Doc. I'm going to double sign in so that I can both see it and be on my computer.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions before we begin? Okay. At this point, I would like to do a short summary. The Mission Valley SELPA is located in the southern part of the San Francisco Bay Area. The district serves close to, the SELPA serves close to 6,000 students. And the SELPA is comprised of 3 districts: Newark Unified School District, Fremont Unified School District, and New Haven Unified School District. I'm joined here today by the directors of each of those school districts. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, maybe starting with Jan?
Sure. Dr. Jan Hamilton, Director of Special Education at Newark Unified School District. Good morning.
Fran English, Director of Special Education for Fremont Unified School District.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Kapler. I'm the Director for Special Services in Union City, which is New Haven Unified School District.
Great. Thank you very much for being here today and engaging in our review of the annual budget plan and the annual service plan. So what I would like to do is call everyone's attention to the annual budget plan. And the annual budget plan is a summary of the monies that the districts together, the 3 districts, receive on behalf of the SELPA. As we go through here, I'm going to focus on kind of trying to move us through the document. So first page, second page here, we do have a correction to make. The administrative unit name should not be administrative unit, but that should be Fremont Unified School District, because Fremont acts as the administrative unit for the SELPA. So we will be making that correction.
Karen, can you let me in to the Zoom meeting on the other platform as well?
Sure can.
Thank you. And then I see the feedback Google Doc. Okay, I have it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. And then as we move through here, just in terms of in terms of the Mission Valley SELPA, the Mission Valley SELPA collaboratively runs 2 programs for all 3 districts. One's the Transition Partnership Program, and the second one is the Early Start Infant Program. TPP provides transition services to students 18 to 22 years old, and the Early Start Program assesses referred children and provides individualized family service plans for infant and toddlers that are deaf, blind, and orthopedically impaired. The Mission Valley SELPA also works with all 3 districts related to compliance and monitoring activities. The SELPA also seeks to collaborate on training for staff, sharing in MOUs within the county, and also sharing with opportunities to resolve conflicts through alternative dispute resolution efforts. Lastly, the SELPA partners with parents in the community in the form of the Community Advisory Committee, which provides feedback to the LEAs regarding the provision of special ed services. The Mission Valley SELPA is a little unique as compared to other SELPAs in that the SELPA does not share many programs in terms of the provision of special ed services, kindergarten through 12th grade. Each district within the SELPA provides that full continuum of services. All right. This next page here is the, it's called the Special Education Revenue by Source. All right. And as you can see, the majority of the funding for the SELPA comes from the Assembly Bill 602 state aid. And that's close to $30 million. That's 23% of the total funding that comes through the SELPA for special education. In addition to that, we have property taxes. We have the federal IDEA money for Part B and then Part C. We have the infant toddler grant. We also have state mental health and federal mental health funds. Total revenue through the SELPA, $128,823,000. When we look at our total budget by the object codes, the majority of the budget, as you would imagine, goes to salaries. So we have certificated, classified, and then benefits, and that totals close to, let's see, 70% of the budget. When we look at the state, federal, and local revenue summary, you can see that the state special education revenue, 36 million, federal revenue, 10 million, and then the local contributions are 81 million. And what's interesting with that is that when 94142 came in the 70s, it was a mandate to provide special education services, but never since the late 70s has IDEA been fully funded. And so what we are seeing increasingly is the need for a greater and greater contribution from the general education fund and or local taxes. And that clearly is reflected in the revenue summary.
Karen, are we recording this as well as live streaming it or just live streaming it?
We are also recording.
Okay. I do have a question. Since while we are recording, there are likely to be very few people. Do you know what this table 3 is compared to the last? Have we seen it gone up? Is that something that we can easily access at a later time?
Yes, we can easily access that by comparing that with last year's annual service budget.
Okay, let me see if I have that on my my Google Doc. Thank you.
As we go then to the next page, we have here special education local plan operating expenditures. And once again, we're going into a little bit more detail in terms of certificated salaries, classified, employee benefits. Next page talks about the projected expenditures for supplemental aids and services in the regular classroom for students with low incidence disabilities. And that, let's see, I believe concludes the budget review. Any other questions from any of the directors, or are we seeing any public comment?
No public comment.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Okay, at this point then, let's go ahead and start looking at the annual service plan. The annual service plan forms have changed considerably this year. So it begins with who are the participating LEAs. And obviously within the Mission Valley SELPA, it is again, Newark, New Haven, and Fremont. Page, it's attachment 2, page 1, again, is the summary of the projected special education revenue that will be distributed to each district. And again, this is the distributions are based on the October ADA counts for each district. And today at the Regional Policy Board, Robert Pascal will go into more detail in regards to those funds and how the distribution was calculated. What I would like to draw your attention to is it's actually this one here, and that's attachment 6, page 1 of 1. On this page, it's titled Special Academic Instruction and Related Services by the LEA and Service Codes. Both Bobby Platt and Amy Fang of Fremont Unified contacted each district and asked them to provide Amy and Bobby with information as to which services each district was providing its students. So as you can see, each of these codes in the boxes refers to a specific service. So for example, code number 330 is specialized academic instruction. And as you can see on this form, each of the 3 districts has the box number 330 checked. So each of the districts provides specialized academic instruction. I believe as we move forward, 210 is family services and training, 230 nutrition, 240 coordination. So it's likely that some districts may not be providing, say, nutrition services to infants 0 to 2 because Fremont is the administrative unit for providing infant services. But in that this is a different format than we've done this than in the past, I would like each of the special ed directors to take a moment to review this data. In the past, if you remember, we had a sheet which listed every single school in each of the LEAs. And then to the right of that, it was checked boxes which services were provided in the district. So the reason I asked for you guys to review this is because I see, Fremont has quite a few boxes checked. And then Newark, there's a number of boxes not checked. And I'm pretty sure that you guys are providing those services. So for example, I noted, if we look at the service, that code is 350. And the service that 350, or the service code 350 designates, is individual and small group instruction. And I'm pretty sure that New Haven provides some individual and small group instruction. So that probably should have been marked that it was provided. The other service code was 425, and that's adapted PE. And I'm pretty sure that Newark does provide adapted PE services. So Jan, just for a quick review of this, is there any explanation that you might have regarding why those boxes weren't checked, or?
No,
Karen,
and I think there should be a correction because we do provide APE for elementary and high school, and we do provide individual and small group instruction. So it's obviously an error.
Okay, all right. So what I will do is I actually identified close to probably 20 services that I'm fairly certain that you guys provide that were not indicated on here. And it may have been that Amy and Bobby did not receive all the data from you guys yet to be able to make sure that was accurately input. So we'll make that correction on attachment 6, page 1 of 1.
Karen,
Thank
can I interject?
Yeah.
So when we pulled the annual service plan, it's also what you provided in the last year. And so I looked up the differences between Newark and Fremont. And, you know, actually this is the first time we've seen this iteration of the form. And a lot of it is about specialized services that you may not have a student in that year. So you may offer it when needed, but it is not necessarily needed. For instance, 436 is health services. And while I do have many students receiving services from the nurse, they are not written in the IEP exactly as such. We may offer them as individualized education services because a trained paraprofessional could add those things. Or job coaching, we often call that vocational services rather than true job coaching. Travel training, I don't currently have those students who are getting that exact service, but we do a lot of busing to field trips, but it's not a service on their IEP. Things like that could account for it in a difference in how we wrote it, and things that are highly specialized for students we do not have in that calendar year.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that's a great point. And again, the difficulty with this is that, needless to say, each LEA is responsible to provide the full continuum of services should a child need it. But this is also a snapshot of the 3 districts on one day. And while, let's just say that day was October 2nd, you may not have been serving a student with, say, orientation and mobility services, even though a student moved into the district and you served them with that service January through June. So that also too might account for, at this point, that box not being checked. Be that as it may, I do want to make sure that each of the districts get credit for the services they were providing on that day. So let's do a double check on those to make sure.
Should we have done anything that we are able to provide, or it's only the services we're currently providing?
The directions state that we're to check the box for each service provided by the corresponding LEA. If the service is not provided, leave the box blank.
Right.
At this point, if that on that snapshot of a day that service was not being provided, then it would be blank.
Okay.
And then just to clarify, Karen, since I was not actually on board in October, I didn't come on board until the end of November. I would just go on the presumption of where we are now, correct? In completing this form.
I will go back and check on that. Let me check on that one, Jan.
Thank you.
Jan, if you need it, I can also show you how to pull that information out of, say, the services you've had out of the last calendar year.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, but I mean, I just want to say, like, I looked up the ones that Freeman had that I didn't, and they were job coaching, mentoring, travel, social worker, behavior services, and day treatment. All behavior services and day treatment we absolutely have, and we write them under a sort of different code. And job coaching, mentoring, we often put more like career services. So there is some flexibility between which codes you choose.
So Sarah, that kind of brings us to the next point, and that is as we move through this document in front of us, pull this down a little bit here.
Karen, if you have a minute, can you let me in Zoom? I'm trying to log in twice so that I can switch between screens.
Okay, everybody okay there?
Yes.
Okay, so as we go through the second part of the annual service plan, you can see where it would list the code. So for example, 330 is the specialized academic instruction, probably the most frequently provided services on the IEP. And that is, the description is adapting as appropriate to the needs of the child with a disability, content, methodology, delivery of instruction to ensure access of the child to the general ed so that he and she can meet the education standards. This is provided by all schools operating within each of the LEAs. It's also provided by our non-public schools. As we go through here, there also is another error. That one is on page 20. And that is, I believe it says residential treatment, and the box was checked by schools operating in the LEA. And we know that our schools within the LEA do not provide residential treatment. The non-public schools provide residential treatment, but obviously our LEAs contract with those to provide the service. A number of these services at this point we are contracting with because we do not have the staff in our district to be able to provide that service. And that's very common for speech services, for physical therapy services, and I'm sure each of you as directors are experiencing that in several other areas.
Yeah, mental health would be
Yeah.
another one.
So again, here's that page 20 where it's providing 24-hour out-of-home placement that provides intensive therapeutic services to support the education program of the child. Again, we noted schools operating in the LA, but this needs to be corrected. So I think that each of you are able to also pull up the annual service plan and the annual budget plan. I'm going to give you just a few minutes to review through that yourself and take a once over, and then we'll have some discussion on the plan.
Yeah, it does seem like some of this needs to be gone over. I realize we got this form at the last minute and none of us have seen that, but there is some things didn't translate correctly.
Okay, so what I would like to do is, once again, this, both of the plans, after we complete today's meeting, and we, if we have any other public comment that we need to consider and review, they are to go to the Regional Policy Board for approval, and then they're ultimately sent to the county and then California Department of Ed. So it looks like, Sarah, as you're noting, we're going to need to make some corrections. What I might like to do is we can conclude this meeting within maybe the next 10 minutes. That can give you some time so that when we do present these to the Regional Policy Board, we can let them know where those corrections are going to be. Does that sound like an adequate plan, or does anyone else have another idea they'd want to consider?
Well, I mean, it kind of matters what the problem is. Like, I don't see a problem with the data I submitted, but it didn't translate to this form correctly.
Okay.
So in order to fix it, I would
I
need
thought
some
my
collaboration.
data was. I thought my data was fine as well. I basically went off what Jennifer went from last year, so I don't know where that fell short as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Jan, why don't you and I call when we go on break? I can show you how to run it out of SACE, and then you could double check.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Sarah, do we have anything on our Google Doc for public participation or feedback?
How did the public get that document?
It should have been attached to the Google invite. Okay. Okay.
There's no link. We're using the Regional Policy Board link for this as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see a link on the invite at 8 o'clock or any documents.
Okay. All right. So we will need to link that.
If you could send it again, Karen, that would be great, I think, at this point.
If I could do what, Jan?
You could just send that document again so we can review it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I will definitely resend that as soon as we conclude today. I do want to make sure for the public purposes, though, that I go through, scroll through each page so that each page has been presented publicly, and that if someone chose to go through this recording, they would have that opportunity to see it in this, as well as we'll make that accessible on the website. So I'm going to slowly scroll through the remaining pages. So that via this forum, we did have the opportunity to look at everything as it's currently noted. In summary, we did say that we would be changing the data that was reflected on page 20, in that that wasn't correct in terms of the residential treatment. We'll also be looking at the services provided by each of the LEAs as noted on, I believe it was attachment number 6. And as we go through here, Sarah, I'll just check one more time. Any feedback on the Google Doc?
No, I think I'm the only one on the Google Doc.
And as I'm going through the 800 codes, like you had said, Sarah, many of these refer directly to the transition goals that students have, job coaching, mentoring, linkages. travel training, and other.
So Karen, is it true that we no longer report separately? Oh, only on that cover page. I see. Okay.
There is a question, Sarah, that we have to the California Department of Ed regarding separate reporting. My feedback to California Department of Ed would be that the pages as they had been previously organized were very helpful. They were helpful for, I think, our public as well as our district leadership to be able to pick up one page, have all the schools listed, and know what services were being provided at those schools. So I think that it would be a service to everyone to have that format, or at least a more similar format, put back into place. Okay, I'm going to then, unless there's any other further comment or question, conclude this public hearing. And we will then close the meeting and we will reconvene at 9 o'clock for the Regional Policy Board meeting, which is also another public meeting. And we will hopefully look to, if you don't mind, Sarah, connecting with Jen regarding that data. And I will also connect with Bobby regarding what she had received from each of the districts in clarifying. And we will also make sure that the annual service plan and the annual budget plan are documents that are able to be accessed publicly. Okay. Anything else, guys? Okay. Once again, then I thank you, each of the directors, for your time this morning, and any public feedback that we will continue to take up until 9 o'clock this morning. And then after that, we will be presenting this information to the superintendents and board members as part of the SELPA's Regional Policy Board.
Karen, will the corrections be reflected on the meeting this morning, or will they be made public?
I think what we would be doing is discussing the corrections and making them verbally known at the meeting, and then obviously making them written form as soon as then we can get that correct information.
And
because of the Brown Act, we have to stick with the agenda that we've already posted.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Understood. Thank you.
All right. Again, like I said, I thank you guys for your participation. Unless there's any other comments or questions, I'm going to conclude the meeting.
Thank you,
Thank
Karen.
you, Karen.